Hi, welcome to English Hamster. Are you learning English? Great. Here we learn through stories. They are simple and interesting. You can improve English while learning knowledge. Remember to subscribe, like and comment. Let's get started.
Let me tell you a story. It's a story about a ship, but not just any ship. This ship was the biggest and most beautiful ship the world had ever seen. Her name was Titanic. Part 1. A ship like no other. In the early 1900s, people traveled across the ocean by ship. There were no airplanes for long trips yet. If someone wanted to go from Europe to America, they had to take a ship. Two companies were very famous at that time. One was Cunard Line. The other was White Star Line. Cunard Line had two very fast ships. Their names were Lusitania and Mauretania. They were fast like race cars on the sea, but White Star Line had a different idea. They didn't want the fastest ship. They wanted the biggest, the most comfortable, and the most beautiful ship. So they made a plan to build 3 ships. Their names were Olympic, Titanic, and Britannic. Among them, Titanic became the most famous. Titanic was built in a city called Belfast in Northern Ireland. The work started in March 1909. It took almost 3 years to finish. More than 3,000 workers helped build it. The ship was very big. It was as long as 3 football fields. That's hard to imagine, right? It was also as tall as a 17-story building. People said Titanic could never sink. Why? Because it had 16 special compartments inside. These compartments were like big boxes. If water came into 1 or 2 boxes, the ship could still float. Even 4 boxes full of water were not a problem. That's why everyone thought Titanic was unsinkable. Philip Franklin, a top man at White Star Line, said to the press, "This ship cannot sink." The newspapers believed him. People believed him too. No one thought anything bad could happen to Titanic. Now let's go inside the ship. Titanic was not just strong, it was also like a floating palace. The inside looked like a 5-star hotel. The walls had beautiful wooden panels. The windows had colorful glass. The floors were made of fine tiles. There were grand staircases, big dining rooms, and long hallways. The most famous staircase had golden railings and a glass ceiling above. Rich people liked to walk there in fancy clothes and jewelry. There were many special things on Titanic. It had a swimming pool with warm water. There was a Turkish bath where people could relax. There was even an electric bath, which was a new thing back then. There was a gym with exercise machines, a squash court, and a library. Passengers could go to the barber shop, eat in restaurants, or sit in cafes and smoke rooms. One special restaurant called a la carte was so fancy that people had to pay extra money to eat there. The first-class rooms were beautiful. They had soft beds, silk curtains, and stylish furniture. Even the second-class rooms were better than most first-class rooms on other ships. The third-class rooms were simple but still clean and comfortable. Building Titanic was not cheap. It cost $7.5 million in 1912. That's about $200 million today. A first-class ticket was $4,350, like $100,000 today. Only very rich people could buy them. A second-class ticket was about $60, $1,500 today. Third-class tickets were between $15 and $40, which is $400 to $1,000 today. Everyone wanted to be on Titanic's first trip. This trip was called the maiden voyage. The ship would sail from Southampton, England, to New York City, USA. Rich people, famous people, and even poor families with dreams joined this trip. Some were on vacation. Some wanted a new life in America. Everyone was excited. On April 10, 1912, Titanic left the port. Crowds came to watch it leave. People waved goodbye. Photographers took pictures. The ship looked like a castle on the water. It carried 2,224 people, including passengers and crew. Some rich people on board were John Jacob Astor IV, one of the richest men in the world, Molly Brown, a brave woman who later became a hero, and Isidore and Ida Strauss, owners of Macy's store. Many poor immigrants were in third class, dreaming of a better future in America. At first, everything was perfect. The weather was good. The sea was calm. The ship moved smoothly at 21.5 knots, around 40 km/h. People enjoyed their time. They ate in restaurants, walked on the deck, and slept in soft beds. No one knew what was coming. Then, on April 14th, Titanic received a message: icebergs ahead. Other ships sent warnings, but the crew did not slow down. They thought the ship was safe. It was unsinkable, remember. That evening, the sky was dark. There was no moon. The stars were not bright. The sea was so calm that the water looked like glass. This made it harder to see anything ahead. Two men, Frederick Fleet and Reginald Lee, were on watch in the crow's nest. That's a small lookout point high above the ship, but they didn't have binoculars. They looked with their eyes only. At 11:39 p.m., Fleet saw something big and dark. He rang the bell 3 times. Then he picked up the phone and shouted, "Iceberg right ahead." The officer on the bridge, William Murdoch, tried to turn the ship. He also gave the order to slow down the engines. But it was too late. Just 37 seconds later, at 11:40 p.m., Titanic hit the iceberg. Part 2, A Night of Fear. The iceberg was very big. It was around 400 feet long and 220 feet high. That's as tall as a 20-story building. When Titanic hit it, some ice fell onto the deck. But the real problem was under the water. The iceberg tore a long hole in the side of the ship. It opened 6 small cracks below the waterline. Water started coming in very fast. At first, most people didn't know anything had happened. Some heard a strange noise. Others felt a little shake. But it didn't feel like a crash. In the first-class lounge, some people laughed and said, "Did we hit something?" But deep inside the ship, the workers knew it was serious. Water was rushing into the lower rooms. The ship's watertight compartments started to fill, but the iceberg had damaged more compartments than Titanic could handle. If only 4 were full, the ship would float. But now 5 were full and still rising. Captain Edward John Smith was told about the damage. He went to check it himself. Then he called a meeting with his officers. They looked at the ship's blueprints. After a short time, they knew the truth: Titanic was going to sink. It was hard to believe. Just a few hours ago, everyone thought this ship was unsinkable. Now it was slowly going down into the cold, dark sea. Still, many passengers were calm. The lights were still on. The music still played. People didn't understand the danger. Some thought this was only a drill. At 12:00 a.m., Captain Smith gave the order: prepare the lifeboats. He told the wireless operators, Jack Phillips and Harold Bride, to send out a distress signal. They used Morse code to send CQD and then SOS. These were messages asking other ships to help. The Titanic had 20 lifeboats, but this was not enough for everyone. There were 2,224 people on board. the lifeboats could only carry about 1,178 people. That meant almost half of the people had no place to go. Why were there so few lifeboats? The company wanted the ship's decks to look beautiful. More lifeboats would take up space. People thought Titanic was so safe that they didn't need many boats. This was a big mistake. At around 12:30 a.m., the first lifeboat was lowered into the water. It could hold 65 people, but it only had 28. Many people still didn't want to leave the ship. They thought the ship was safer than a small boat in the cold sea. Some men let women and children go first. In fact, many men stayed behind and helped others. They were brave. Some didn't survive, but they became heroes. In the third-class area, people had more trouble. Many didn't speak English. Some doors were locked to keep them from going to the upper decks. Families tried to find each other in the dark. It was chaos. The sea that night was very cold, only -2 degrees C, 28 degrees F. If someone fell into the water, they could only survive for a few minutes. Their body would freeze, and they would not be able to swim or breathe. At 1:30 a.m., the front of Titanic, called the bow, was underwater. The back of the ship, called the stern, lifted into the air. The ship was tilting forward. People began to panic. The band kept playing music. They wanted to keep people calm. Some say they played the hymn, "Nearer, My God, to Thee." No one knows for sure, but it gave people peace in their final moments. The wireless operators continued sending messages. One ship, the Carpathia, received the call. It was 58 miles away. The captain of the Carpathia, Arthur Rostron, told his crew to go full speed to help. But it would take over 3 hours to reach Titanic. Another ship, the Californian, was closer, only about 20 miles away. But the Californian's radio was turned off for the night. The operator had gone to bed. The ship saw Titanic's flares in the sky but did not understand them. They thought it was a party, not a cry for help. At 2:15 a.m., the Titanic was in great danger. Water filled the whole front part. The back of the ship was high in the air. The pressure was too much. The middle of the ship broke. It split into 2 pieces. The front part sank quickly into the deep ocean. The back floated for a short time. Then it too sank, turning upward, then disappearing into the sea. At 2:20 a.m., Titanic was gone. Part 3: Rescue and Aftermath. When the Titanic disappeared under the water, it left behind a terrible silence. The sea was dark and cold. There were still many people in the water, crying for help. Some had life jackets. Some tried to hold onto pieces of wood or broken lifeboats. But the water was freezing, and most could not survive more than a few minutes. The people in the lifeboats heard the cries. Some wanted to go back and help, but many were afraid. They thought the lifeboat might flip if too many people tried to get in. Some lifeboats had space for more people, but they did not return. Out of 2,224 people on board, only 705 survived. That means more than 1,500 people died. It was one of the worst ship disasters in history. At around 4 a.m., the ship Carpathia finally arrived. The crew on Carpathia saw flares and lifeboats in the water. They quickly started pulling people aboard. Some survivors were crying. Some were too cold to speak. Others were in shock. The crew of the Carpathia gave them blankets, hot drinks, and food. Some were so weak that they had to be lifted with ropes. The rescue work went on for hours. By 8:30 a.m., all the survivors were on the Carpathia. The ship turned and headed to New York. The survivors looked back at the empty sea. Titanic was gone. Many of their loved ones were gone too. When the Carpathia arrived in New York, thousands of people were waiting. They wanted news. They wanted answers. Families hoped their loved ones were among the survivors. Newspapers around the world wrote about the Titanic disaster. People were shocked. How could the unsinkable ship sink? Why were there not enough lifeboats? Why didn't other ships help in time? Governments started investigations. In both the United States and the United Kingdom, people asked hard questions. Survivors told their stories. Crew members explained what happened. One of the biggest questions was about the SS Californian. That ship was only 20 miles away. Why didn't it help? The crew had seen the flares from Titanic, but they didn't understand what they meant. Also, the radio was off, so they didn't hear the distress signals. The captain of the Californian, Stanley Lord, said he didn't know the ship was in trouble. But many people didn't believe him. They said the Californian could have saved many lives. Because of the Titanic disaster, new rules were made. Ships had to carry enough lifeboats for everyone. Radios had to stay on 24 hours a day. Ships had to send help if they saw flares or heard distress calls. These changes made sea travel safer for everyone. Back to the survivors, many of them had a hard time after the disaster. They lost family, friends, and all their belongings. Some never spoke about it again. Others told their stories to the world. One famous survivor was Molly Brown. She helped many people during the disaster. She gave her coat to a cold man. She told others not to give up. Later, people called her the Unsinkable Molly Brown. There were many acts of bravery that night. Men gave up their seats for women and children. Crew members helped people escape. Musicians kept playing music to calm others. Even though the ship was sinking, they stayed to help. The Titanic showed the world something important. Nature is strong, and human pride can be dangerous. People thought the ship was perfect, but one iceberg changed everything. Still, from this tragedy, the world learned. Ships became safer. People understood that no one is stronger than the sea. Part 4: The Ship Beneath the Sea. After the Titanic sank in 1912, no one knew exactly where the ship was. It had gone deep into the Atlantic Ocean, more than 12,000 feet down. That's about 3,800 meters. It was too deep for people to visit at that time. For many years, the Titanic became a mystery under the sea. Some people thought the wreck would never be found. Others believed it had broken into many pieces. But people never forgot the ship. Books were written, movies were made. The story of the Titanic became famous around the world. Then, in 1985, 73 years after the sinking, a team of scientists led by Dr. Robert Ballard finally found the Titanic. They used a special underwater robot to search the ocean floor. When they saw the wreck on their screen, it was an emotional moment. Titanic was real, and she was still there. The front part of the ship, called the bow, was mostly in one piece. It looked sad and silent, but still powerful. The back part, called the stern, was badly broken. Pieces of the ship were scattered across the ocean floor. Around the wreck, there were many objects: shoes, plates, luggage, furniture, even a child's toy. These things had not moved for more than 70 years. They reminded the world of the real people who had been on that ship. Scientists studied the wreck and learned a lot. They saw how the ship broke apart. They also saw how the ocean was slowly destroying it. Tiny bacteria in the water were eating the metal. Saltwater was making the ship rust and fall apart. Experts said that the Titanic might disappear completely by the year 2030. Some people wanted to bring pieces of the ship back to land. Others said the Titanic should be left alone. They believed it was a place of rest, like a grave. The debate continues even today. But one thing is clear: the story of the Titanic still touches people's hearts. In 1997, a movie called Titanic came out. It became one of the most popular films in history. Millions of people watched it. The movie told a love story, but it also showed the true events of that night. It helped a new generation learn about the ship and the people on board. After the movie, more people wanted to know about the real Titanic. Museums created special exhibits. Some people even made models of the ship. Schools taught students the history of the disaster. In 2012, on the 100th anniversary of the sinking, many events were held around the world. People remembered the lives lost. Some took a ship to the exact spot in the ocean where the Titanic sank. There, they held a ceremony and dropped flowers into the sea. One man, an Australian billionaire named Clive Palmer, made a big announcement. He wanted to build a new Titanic, a modern version called Titanic II. The new ship would look just like the old one, with the same beautiful design. But it would have better safety rules and more lifeboats. Many people were excited about the idea. They said it was a way to honor the past. But building the ship was not easy. There were many delays. As of now, Titanic II has not been finished. Still, the dream is alive. Part 5: Lessons from the Deep. More than 100 years have passed since the Titanic sank, but people still talk about it. Why? Because the story of Titanic is not just about a ship. It is about dreams, mistakes, courage, and hope. Titanic was a symbol of progress. It showed what humans could build. It had the newest technology, the finest rooms, and the biggest engines. People were proud of it. They said, "Nothing can stop us now." But nature is powerful. The iceberg was a simple piece of frozen water. It was made by the earth. It did not care about human pride. When the ship met the iceberg, everything changed. It was a lesson: never think we are stronger than nature. Another lesson is about being prepared. The ship did not have enough lifeboats. Why? Because people believed it would never sink. That belief cost many lives. After Titanic, new laws were made. Now, every ship must have enough lifeboats for all passengers. Radios must be on all night. Safety drills must be done before the trip. These rules have saved many lives since then. The Titanic also showed the best side of people. Even in the worst moment, some passengers and crew showed great courage. Men gave their seats to women and children. Crew members helped people escape. Musicians played music until the very end. These acts of kindness and bravery are what people remember most. Out of the 705 survivors, many were women and children. Most of the men stayed behind. They knew there were not enough boats. They chose to let others live. These people were not rich or famous, but they were heroes. One survivor, Jack Thayer, later wrote, "There is something in the human spirit that never dies." He was right. The Titanic story is not just sad, it is also full of strength. Some survivors had a hard life after. They lost family and friends. Some had nightmares for years. Others never rode a ship again. But many rebuilt their lives. They started new families, found new jobs, and lived with purpose. That is another lesson: never give up. Life can be hard. Sometimes terrible things happen, but people are strong. We can heal. We can grow. We can remember and we can move forward. Today, the Titanic is at the bottom of the sea. It is slowly fading, but the memory is still alive. In books, in museums, in stories like this one, you can still feel the heartbeat of that ship and its people. Children still ask, "Why did it sink?" Adults still cry when they hear the music. Tourists still visit Titanic exhibits. The ship may be gone, but the story lives on. And what about you? You listened to this story. You learned new words. You traveled back in time. Maybe you felt sad. Maybe you felt inspired. That means the story touched your heart. That means the Titanic still has something to teach us. So next time you see a photo of the ship or hear the music from the movie, remember this. Titanic was not just a ship. It was a dream. It was a warning. It was a memory. And now, it is a part of your story too.
Hey, if you learned something new today, please give this video a like. Write your thoughts in the comments and subscribe to the channel. It only takes a second and it really helps to create more English videos for you. Thank you. See you next time. Bye.